Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Bob Yates. I'm a senior solutions architect for the mainframe and enterprise DevOps. The session I'll be leading today is entitled Enable Your DevOps Transformation. So let's just jump right into it. So as you look at the slide here, the thing that comes to mind for me is we live in a very interesting time. The significant advances in technology have created new opportunities for both the business and for IT. But at the same time, this rapid pace of change, it's created incredible challenges, and the complexity is just off the chart. As you look here, at the heart of many organizations is ZOS. It's a mainframe. It's been around for years, maybe since the very beginning of the start of that business. But that's not the only thing that's running today. Over time, and all of us know this, other things have come into play. It could be you started off with some distributed systems and a few other applications in Unix, and then we started into public and private clouds, and now we're into the Internet of Things. And it's not like one of those went away when the others came along. Everything kept expanding and growing and adding to the complexity. Now, what's an organization to do, right? One idea is, well, we'll just throw out all the old. But our view of the world is that we can bring order to the chaos and we can bring it all together. So let's talk about that as we go through. For my demonstration today, here's what I'll be using. Your technology stack will most certainly look different than this, but this, I wanted to give you a lay of the land. This is what I'll be using. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice that I have Enterprise Analyzer, Enterprise Developer as my IDE. ChangeMan ZMF is my mainframe SCCM tool, Enterprise Test Server for testing, and then some deployment. And then other tools as well that our customers, many of them have, things like SonarQube for static code analysis, Slack for communications between individuals, Jenkins for your build pipeline. So like I said, your technology stack will most certainly look different than this. You may have some or none of these. You may have a couple here and there. It doesn't matter because the communication is REST services. And so it doesn't matter what you're using. Specifically for my demo environment, here's what I'll be showing. So on the left-hand side on the Z platform, as I mentioned before, I have ChangeMan ZMF as my mainframe SCCM tool. You may have that. You may have other technologies. You may have a distributed technology as well for code, and you want to work with both. And all of that is possible. I won't be showing that in today's demo, but rest assured, all of that's possible. The other thing I wanted to point out here is many times when I go into an organization, DevOps is focused just on a part of the organization. It's just where the distributed developers work. And many times the mainframe, for a variety of reasons, is not included. It could be that there's the feeling the mainframe's going to go away. It could be there's a feeling that the mainframe's too complex. It could be that the tool that you have isn't able to handle the communication and be part of your pipelines. But whatever it is, I'm here to tell you that yes, indeed, a mainframe SCCM tool can be part of that pipeline. And I think it's vital that we enable that. The reason why it's vital is many times we'll have new technologies come in, let's say a modern IDE, which I'm a huge fan of. And then we'll try to move everyone in the organization, all the developers, to use it. And while on one hand, there's benefit in doing that, there is also a downside. The downside is many times we have individuals who are not only very comfortable using TSO ISPF, but they're also extremely, like I said, comfortable, but that's where they accomplish the greatest good for the organization. So instead of forcing individuals to move to a new technology where maybe their productivity drops off, or worse, maybe they decide they just don't want to do that and leave, how about if we bring them into the pipeline that everyone else is using? And so I'll show that today. As you see here, then I'll be using Enterprise Developer as my IDE. For code analysis, I'll be using both SonarQube for static code analysis, as well as Enterprise Analyzer. I'll be using Jenkins for my CI build, and then a little bit of test server. So what are the scenarios specifically that I'll be showing today? Well, I mentioned this a little bit, but let's just go through the exact details. So in scenario 1, I will be accessing TSO ISPF. For some of you, that may be foreign, but just think of it as a less modern IDE, but nonetheless still extremely useful and powerful, and a lot of folks use it today. So I'll create a change package in ChangeMan. I'll check out some code. Something that you may not expect, I'll check out some Java code just to show that I can do that. I'll make a small change to it, and then I'll go ahead and submit that for a compile, or usually called a build nowadays. And because we have the REST services, Jenkins is listening for that action on ChangeMan. It's called a webhook. And so then Jenkins will see that I'm wanting to do a build for a Java component. The Jenkins pipeline will begin to run, and I'll show you that in real time. And then that will, in turn, kick off SonarQube to do some static code analysis. Only if that's successful will it then allow the compile to happen. Now, the thing to remember here is this is a mainframe developer. So what happens if something goes wrong? Well, we've taken care of that as well. And I'll show you in the demo how we then take the information from SonarQube and Jenkins and bring that back to the listing where a mainframe developer already understands and can easily view if there were problems. All right, so that's scenario 1. Let's take a look at scenario 2. Very similar, but now I will be using a modern IDE. As I mentioned, I'll be using Enterprise Developer for Z. I won't create a new package. I'll just use the existing package I've already created, but I'll check out some COBOL code this time, make a similar small change, execute a build. Jenkins again will be listening, but a different pipeline this time will kick off just to show that process. And then my third scenario, and this is the one where it really brings it all together for us. So in this scenario, I'll do this through the IDE. I'll promote some code, but I'll promote it to a test environment on the mainframe side of things from my IDE. Now, what will happen here is, again, Jenkins will be listening for that activity, and it'll then intercept that. And before doing the promote, it'll say, well, hold on. And here was the thinking with this use case here, is that before we use the resources on the mainframe for this promotion into a test environment, why don't we do testing locally? And so everything will be automated for me. I'll see that my test environment is automatically provisioned. I don't even have to worry about doing that. Once that test environment is provisioned, just like before, we'll go ahead and get that source code, create an executable. I will go ahead and do another analysis of that because it's already built into the pipeline. Then we'll take that code, as long as the analysis is good, we'll go ahead and promote it to the local test environment, and we'll kick off some tests. As long as those tests are successful, then Jenkins will communicate back to the mainframe and allow that promotion to go through, and we'll show that. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted you to understand the lay of the land, how the technology stack is set up, and then specifically the demo scenarios. So here's just an overview again of what I'm going to use as I go through my demo. Okay, so let's jump into that. So let's go ahead and come over here. Now let me bring up my environments and just do a quick explanation of what's going on over here. Okay, so over here I have 4 different servers. Now I happen to be using AWS, but that's not required. You could be using Azure, you could be using whatever cloud service you want. That cloud service could be public or private or a mix. None of that matters. You could be doing things locally. None of that matters. But just for my demo, I'm using AWS. Now I've broken it into 4 different servers. So in the top left, I have my development server. You'll see I'll be using that for all my development needs. Top right, I then have my build server. Bottom left is where my enterprise server will get spun up when I do my provisioning. And then the bottom right is where I'll be doing some functional testing using UFT. So let's go ahead and go into my development server to start off with. So here's ChangeMan ZMF. Let's go ahead and, as I mentioned in my use case, I'm going to create a change package. So here's some existing packages. Let me create a new one. As I said, come down and make a, well, let's change the title. Let's call this for Impact 2021. You can see there's some other bits of information that ChangeMan captures here. None of that's relevant for today's demo. Again, we'll just call this demo for Impact 2021. I will go ahead and change this parameter. Again, not required, and we'll just call this demo. And then you can see here the final step, ChangeMan allows me to install to multiple sites. And so I'm just going to go ahead and change this to this year since we're in 2021. And we'll hit enter. And you'll see here now, package BDCV, that's the application, 357 has been created. And if I move my picture down just a little bit, you'll see the same thing. There we go. See the same thing right here. Created package BDCV 357. All right, so let's go ahead and check out some code. And as I mentioned, I'm going to check out some Java code. So we'll just go ahead and select this first one, this hello world that's here. And so there we go. We've now checked out that component. Okay, great. Now let's look inside the change package. There is the hello world component I was talking about. So let's edit that component. And we'll just go ahead and reset this. So I know that I need to make a few changes. Let's see, I have a space here that I didn't want. And I know that I want to change this to say logger.log. And then instead of hello world, let's say hello impact. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So now ChangeMan gives me a differences report, which is nice. I can save that away if I want. I'm not going to for this demo. Shows me a little bit more about the history, where I've checked it out, etc. Now, before I hit enter here, let me just refresh what we're going to do. So this is the screen that where ChangeMan knows, okay, the language is Java. Here's your compile procedure, right? It tells ChangeMan how things should be done in the compile. There's my job card for those who are, familiar with the mainframe. But when I hit enter, I'm then going to swap over to the build server so we can catch the Jenkins product listening for this action, and then we can watch what happens there. So I hit enter here, and there we go. So let me go ahead and shrink that down and then come over to my build server. And let's look at the pipelines I have running over here. And I can see that this Sonar analysis just kicked off. And so here it is, number 116 should be kicking off in just a second. And so this is what we're looking for, right? So we did a cleanup. We can see that we get the latest components. SonarQube does what it needs to do to validate everything, and then there's a quality gate just to make sure that everything looked good, and it completed as I would have expected it to. So let's come back to the other side, because remember, we're a mainframe developer, so I wouldn't expect a mainframe developer to have jumped over to Jenkins, right? I just did that to show you behind the scenes, but the mainframe developer would have been living over here, right, on this side of things. And let's say that now, you know, they're waiting here for their compile, their build to come back, and just like I just did, they just hit enter a couple of times, and so the messages that came back to tell them any kind of useful information suddenly go away. And okay, so did it work? Did it not work? Well, you can easily find that information from the mainframe, right? So I can just do from here, I can say, look at the browse the listing. Now I happen to know, notice this is the package that we're in, it's the application. I happen to know that the library type for the listing I want is going to come back in a type of LSH. But let me get rid of that just so you can see, because there's a couple of different listings, right? My normal listings for things like COBOL, right, would come back under LST as you would expect. But I've put my HFS code to come back under LSH. So let's select that. And let's come down to the hello world that's in the staging library, and let's view that. So we'll just do a quick reset here. So you can see it starts off, if I bring over my cursor, you know, hello world .java, that's the listing, right? There's some other bits of information. Now, why don't we just come down 10 so we can see this all in one screen. So I can see all the relevant information. So I can see my HTTP code, the message came back okay. The event that kicked off everything is event 100. Right? The URL, the name of the subscriber. So if we were to go look in Jenkins, we'd be able to see that it was called pre-build to SonarQube. The actual Jenkins job number, remember that was 116. I pointed that out. And then the job queue number 107 came back as successful. And if I scroll right, I can see, right, some additional information over here if need be. Now, why that's important is because I may be, you know, a mainframe developer, and if something went wrong, I would need to then be able to either understand that or at least communicate to others in the organization and give them relevant bits of information so they could help me figure out what didn't go right. Okay, so that was scenario number one. So why don't we come over here to my IDE now. And so this is Enterprise Developer. And here is the Application Explorer. Notice I'm looking inside of ChangeMan, the ChangeMan applications at the BDCV application. And I wanted to look at some of the packages. Now, let me just do a refresh here to get the latest package. Remember, it was package 357 inside of the BDCV application. So I just want to make sure that I get package 357, and there it is, demo for Impact 2021. And we can see here, if I expand that we have our Java code. But I wanted to do scenario number 2, which was to check out some additional code. So let's just go to a checkout from baseline. Now, I had done this previously, so it remembered everything that I wanted to get some source code, but I could just as easily come over here and retrieve all the different library types that are available to me. And then I could scroll through and select any of the components I want. Now, I know that I just want this one right here. So I'm just going to check that and say, okay. And so now it's going to communicate out to ChangeMan. It's going to find that. And if I just do a refresh real quick, I'll see then that I not only have my Java, if I bring this down just a little bit further, my Java, but then I have my source. And there's my bbank 20p that I just checked out. All right, so let's edit that. So I just did a double click. That'll bring up an edit session, just like I did before, right? There's nothing that's super, different here. I just wanted to do a standard edit, just like I did, but this time using the IDE. And so we'll come over here and let's do the same thing. Let's say demo for Impact 2021. We'll say that that's good. So we'll go ahead and close that. We want to save the changes that we've made. And so we'll allow that save to take place. And then once the save takes place, we'll be able to, do what else we need to do. Okay, so now ChangeMan gets back involved and it asked me for a change description, right? I'll just do something simple like changed. And so now that information gets saved away. But remember what I wanted to do, not only go ahead and change that information, but let's go ahead and do our build of that component. So we'll kick off the build of the component. Now, the same thing's going to happen here. I'm going to go through a couple of screens, and then I'm going to swap over to the build server so we can see that process taking place. So this is ChangeMan, again, getting back involved, saying, hey, here's the language, here's the build procedure. I could, change other things, but I'm not going to. We'll just click OK here. And then we'll swap over so that we can see in real time what's happening on the build server side. And so here we are. And you notice right there, so let's move into that. And this just had one step in this Jenkins job. And so I'm doing my code analysis just like before, but this time I'm using Enterprise Analyzer instead of SonarQube. Again, your tool stack probably will be different. You'll have different products that you want to have as part of your pipeline. But I just wanted to give you a couple of different examples so you can see that either one of those is indeed possible. So that was successful, as I would expect. So let's just go back to the dashboard and get ready because we're going to do a third one. And so now if we come back over here, so let's get out of the build server. Let's come back to our development server. And if I do a refresh here, whoops, do a refresh there. There we go. I'll now see that that's ready to go. All right, so we've gone through 2 scenarios so far. Let's talk about the third one because this really brings it all together. So in order to do that, let me just scroll just a little bit so I can show you. Here on the mainframe side, I have a promotion environment set up as test, integrate. And then if we look inside the source here, and I'll just do a refresh just to make sure, but what you would have noticed is there's no bbank 20 here. There's 10, 30, 35, 40, and 50. And that could be that I've promoted those, or it could be that other developers did. But it's the idea that we want to do some integration testing, bringing together all the constituent pieces that have been modified. So let's go ahead and bring this down where we can see everything. So I'm just going to go to my package and say promote. And I'm going to notice when I say promote, it comes up and it says it's going to test level 10 integrate, which is that level over here. Okay. I'll click OK. And the very same thing we did before. So let's go back to Jenkins. Not that you have to do this, but I want you to be able to see it. And so it now kicked off a new pipeline. So this is going to be 101 that's getting kicked off here. So the very first thing that it's doing is it's provisioning that test server that I was talking about. And then it's going to run through the other bits, right? It's going to check the standards and the build and deploy, and then actually start this region that's getting provisioned right now, and then run the test and those kinds of things. So let's go over and see that that was provisioned. So let's shrink that down. Now here's my environment where that would have been provisioned. So let's maximize that. You can see there's nothing there, right? And there wasn't. But if I just do a quick refresh, there it provisioned my test environment automatically. Now let's come back back over to our build server so we can see. So it provisioned the test environment. It ran through standards, did the build as I would expect. It's now deploying that code, right? So it's taking the code that it got. So that's the source code and any dependencies, was able then to create the executable that it can run locally, deploy that, and then it's going to start that test region and then kick off the test. Then once those tests are successful, that's when it's going to communicate back to the mainframe side of the business and say, hey, that promote you were looking to do on the mainframe, we're now going to let that go through, because indeed, all the tests that we did locally where the resources, right, aren't as expensive and are, easier to manage, all of those kind of things, all of those tests ran fine. So now let's go ahead and promote it on the mainframe, and we'll do that full integration testing with all of the code that's ready to go. And so that's what's going to happen here. Now, if I go ahead and shrink this down, now that I see that the CI tests are about to start, what we would see over here on this side, if I was just to bring this into focus just for a second, we're going to see that it's going to kick off the test over here, right, on the UFT server, and that's what I was talking about. So it's going to fire up my test server, and it's then going to begin to run the test over here. Okay, and there it goes. So if I was just to come up here, we can see now that it's beginning to do all of that. Now, instead of belaboring that whole process that's happening over here, with running through the tests that I had done before, let's come back to this side of the house, because remember, this whole thing was kicked off from my IDE over here, and what I was looking for is those tests to run and then for it to allow the promotion. So far we don't have a bbank 20, but let's do a refresh over here. And there we are, bbank 20p that came out of my package right here has now been promoted into this test environment by the Jenkins process. So let's just do a quick wrap up here so that we can review everything that took place. So we'll come back over to our PowerPoint, and we'll go to full screen. Let's just come down to this slide right here and go full screen with that. So here was exactly what we did, right? Our scenario one, we logged in through TSO ISPF with the assumption that you do have some developers that feel not only more comfortable there, but they're more productive in that environment. And instead of trying to force them and get them to use the modern IDE, while if they want to do that, it's fine. But if not, let's still take advantage of the knowledge and expertise that they bring to the table and have their activity be part of the pipelines that we've already started to use at our shop. And so we showed that in scenario one. Scenario two, very similar, but we used a modern IDE. And notice that I use the same change package. And the idea there, while I don't have to use the same change package, but the idea is that I could have more than one developer that are working in collaboration, some working on mainframe code, some working on non-mainframe code, but yet they can bring things together if that's the need of the application, of the changes that you're making. And I also used different products. So one time I used SonarQube to do some static code analysis. The other time I used Enterprise Analyzer. Then the final one that I did is I promoted to my test server. Now, I actually did the promotion to the mainframe first, but because of the way we had the Jenkins pipeline listening for that promotion, what ended up happening was in that pipeline, several things. So there was a provisioning of a test environment locally. Then we went ahead and brought the code that was needed, both the source and any dependencies, creating an executable. So now we have a local executable. We were able to do some analysis just like we had done previously, then promote that code to the test environment, start up the test server, promote that code. And then you saw that we kicked off and started running whatever automated test we want. In my case, I was using UFT. Only if and when that was successful, we then went ahead and said promote that on the mainframe side to complete the testing that we wanted to do. So that was everything that I wanted to show you today. I'm sure that there's going to be tons of questions, and I look forward to answering those here. So get your questions ready. Please submit those. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to working with any of you in the future with whatever needs you might have. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.